and David Tafuri, a former foreign policy advisor to President Obama's 2008 campaign and a State Department official. David, you worked with Lieutenant General McMaster in the past. How do you see him as a pick?
This is an excellent pick. I had an opportunity to work with him a little bit when I was posted in Baghdad with the State Department. We worked together on the joint campaign plan for Iraq. He is a very clever general. He's very experienced, has lots of on-the-ground experience in counterinsurgency, and most importantly, he's a very good leader. He demonstrated those leadership qualities again and again when I had the chance to observe him in Baghdad. Most importantly, though, he brings real on-the-ground experience from Iraq and Afghanistan fighting insurgents. That's something that we really haven't had with a national security advisor recently. He brings that experience into the White House to what I think is the #1 priority of this administration and what the #1 priority should be, which is to defeat ISIS. It's very interesting. You know, General McMaster served in Tal Afar, which is a hotbed of insurgency in Iraq. It's probably going to be the last stand of ISIS in Iraq. So we have a guy who knows the territory very well and can help design the plan to ultimately defeat ISIS in Iraq and push them out of Iraq. I applaud this appointment.
Carl and McMaster, it was his methods that led to the surge in Iraq that essentially prevented U.S. defeat in that country. He is an independent thinker. People forget about the surge strategy, that it was dismissed by many. Many people didn't believe in it, and it worked.
Right.
What does this kind of independent thinking do as the national security?
What's nice is, you know, a lot of times you'll see some of these appointments, sometimes they're bureaucrats, sometimes they're cut from the same mold of the cookie cutter inside the box. This guy's an outside the box thinker. He's not afraid to go outside the grain. He's actually, to a lot of people who served with him, were very surprised he made general because of his abrasiveness of going against policy, which is exactly what Donald Trump needs. He needs someone who is, you know, loyal and a patriot and American free-loving person, but he also needs somebody who's willing to say, no, wait, hold on, that's not the right thing to do. You need to listen to me. And he needs to push back on all of it. And I think President Trump will be well served by this appointment.
David, he'll also need to adapt to being also a foreign policy strategist, if you will. And you do have a lot of high-level administration officials. General Mattis as the defense secretary, and also Army General John Kelly at Homeland Security. And with McMaster now, how do you read the kind of heavy military presence within the administration?
Well, I think this addition is a very positive one, and I don't have any concerns about the heavy military presence within the administration. You know, the one knock on General McMaster, he doesn't have a lot of experience in Washington, but perhaps that's an asset as well. My biggest worry with General McMaster is I think he's going to bring a lot of creativity, a lot of good ideas, and great leadership to the White House. But my biggest worry is whether the other administration officials in the White House, especially some of the civilians, like a Stephen Miller, like a Steve Bannon, whether they're going to listen to him or whether they're going to override him. And let's wait and see what happens with that.
Well, because you actually have heard Defense Secretary Mattis come out in opposition to things that Donald Trump has said. In recent days, Secretary Mattis differed from President Trump on issues suggesting a tougher stance on Russia. Carl, he talked about we're not taking the oil from Iraq. Donald Trump, we've heard him say that, or at least allude to it, as recently as January 21st after his inauguration. Even General Mattis, Secretary Mattis's position on torture is different than what Trump has said, and Trump has said, I defer to Secretary Mattis.
Yeah, and what's important, you know, one of your own guys, Pete Hegseth, wrote a great book called In the Arena, and it is a very important lesson in that. It's those who have been in the arena, in the scene, are actually are more poised to make these decisions, from an educated perspective, and they understand the enemy, what's going on. And the important thing here is with the increased military presence in the White House, in the political sphere here, we are a goal-oriented group of folks. We were a type of people that see a goal, find out how to do it, implement a plan, and execute. We don't bumble around like the typical Washington bureaucrats. We are a goal-oriented, results-oriented type of group, and I think it's going to be well served. And Washington's, quite frankly, I don't know if they're ready for it, but we're coming.
David, one other issue that these leaders within the administration are going to have to tackle with, and you alluded to it, is our troop levels in Afghanistan. I think there are about roughly 6,000 U.S. troops that are still in Iraq, and what to do with those. That was one of the reasons that Secretary Mattis paid that visit to Iraq.
Yeah, I think you'll see, some of these new appointees pushing for a lasting presence in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I think it's a valid criticism of the previous administration that we didn't keep enough troops on the ground in Iraq to protect against the threat of Islamic radicalism, which arose in 2014 with ISIS coming over from Syria. They have big problems to tackle in the region. Syria is a big problem. We need to have a lasting presence. We ought to have a lasting presence in Baghdad. We ought to have a lasting presence in the north, in the Kurdistan region, who would welcome a lasting American military presence. And then look at Afghanistan. We're going to have troops there for a long time as well.
Carl, I wanted to get your reaction.